Yanif had loitered around the docks until the sun came up. He sat on a wooden bench outside the weary sailor with one hand resting on the cloth bag slung under his robe. He felt a twitch of movement from the cloth bag, but ignored it and looked out to the sea. Although the sun was barely in the sky, the seas around Mist Hass's southern docks were already bustling with life. Dozens of small ships nimbly darted around the large ones, their pilots eager to unload their cargo before forging out for another try of fish or more dubious cargoes.
We join Yanith once more. He's returned from his mysterious trade on board the ship, and he sits watching the sun slowly rise on the dock. You can see the air begin, or you can feel the air begin to warm. And he's staring out across the harbour. You can see ships going about their daily chores, getting ready to sail out for more bounty and more wares. Some of a benign nature like fish, others perhaps on more nefarious schemes.
Yanith rests at the docks after a good night's work, gently patting the pouch that he retrieved in the previous night. He sits down in the gloomy streets of the docks, the sun slowly rising, giving a small light. Activity of the docks starts to become a little busier. Sailors coming back to start fishing for more nefarious means.
So, Yanith is at the docks with the pouch which he retrieved from his journey out to the sea. It is gloomy, but the sun is rising, and he watches over the sailors bringing in their prey or their fish.
So, Yanith is down at the docks with the pouch that he recovered from the ship. Now it's early morning because the weather is gloomy, but the sun is still rising. Now Yanith is looking across the docks and he's looking at the sailors.
Okay, it's early morning in Mist Hass and the sun is rising, but it's still a bit gloomy. And Yanith is at the docks. And he's waiting at the docks with his pouch that he's recently acquired.
Okay, so it is a early morning in Mist Hass. The sun is rising, but it's still a little bit gloomy. And Yanith he's walking to the docks with his little pouch.
So it was a sunny morning in Mist Hass when Yanith took a stroll through the town. It wasn't quite as bright as it has been recently. It was still a little bit gloomy, so it must have been just after dusk or something like that. Dawn, or somewhere similar. A little bit of mist in the air. He walked through the town, he walked through the markets and headed down to the docks, where he saw lots of dock hands, lots of sailors.
An especially scruffy sailor called Yanith's Eye. On his tiny boat, the scruffy man had tried to bring in a squid, but it was clearly too large for the vessel, judging not only by the squid's size, but also by how low the boat sat in the water. None of this was as concerning as the realisation that the squid was not quite as dead as the man had thought, and he was now struggling against a long orange tentacle that was wrapped around his leg. The man's cries of anger turned to panic, and then a scream which cut off as he disappeared into the water. A dozen other fishermen, better equipped than Yanith to deal with the incident, ran over. Yanith watched for a moment and then, deciding there was nothing he could do, he left.
His eye is caught as he waits outside the weary sailor by a small, scruffy sailor making his way in on a small boat. Not quite a rowboat, but a small boat nevertheless. It seems his catch of the day is a squid, but much to the sailor's chagrin, the squid is not quite dead. So there's a loud scream as the tired, exhausted squid wraps its tentacles around the sailor's leg. That then progresses to the sailor screaming, and Yanith watches, wondering if he can aid, whilst about a dozen sailors, probably better equipped to deal with the situation, rush to aid. Yanith decides that his help is not needed, so he progresses on his way.
But one particular fisherman catches Yanith's eye. A squid. One that you would assume that he assumed was caught, wasn't quite dead. Latching its tentacles around the poor innocent sailor, the shriek of terror bellows through the docks. Sailors all around start to approach and try and help this poor man. Yanith, quite clearly seeing that there's not a lot that he can do, and the situation is well in hand, decides to leave and head to his destination.
He notices that one of the sailors has a squid attached to him, a squid that presumably they thought was dead, but is not. And as the tentacles of this creature wrap around the sailor, the fisherman, he screams out. But it's not Jan's duty to intervene, and so he moves on from the docks.
And he sees what looks to be a dead squid, until one of the sailors starts to manhandle it, to shove it into a crate. And then the squid seems to come to life and starts wrapping its tentacles around the man. And the man is, he starts to scream. But Yanith realises he hasn't got the time to waste to look and carry on viewing this spectacle. So he dashes off to his destination.
And while he's on the docks, he sees some sailors with some crates. Outside of the crates, a squid. Okay, so the sailors have got this squid, and they're trying to put it into the crate. And Yanith thinks it's a dead squid, but it's not. It reaches out and starts attacking this sailor. And Yanith says, "Right, I've got no time for this. I've got to be somewhere." So he leaves the docks.
And he is walking through the docks, and he goes and he sees these shipping containers with this fisherman and a sailor, I don't know. And there's this squid on top of the crates, and Yanith's like, "It's a nice squid," and he's, "Thank you." And then it attacks the sailor's face, and Yanith's like, "Look, I haven't got time for this. I've got things to do. I've got places to be." So he leaves the man being attacked by the squid, which I think is a bit unfair, but he leaves the man to get eaten by squid, and he goes back through the town.
He came across some barrels, and on one of the barrels there was a squid-type creature. He looked over. "Oh, hello!" The squid said hello back. And then the squid, unexpectedly, just jumps up and launches at one of the sailors. The sailor's there, fighting the squid off, trying to get it off his face. He's begging Yanith for help. "Oh, I'm sorry, I do not have time. I have places to be and people to meet." So instead of helping the man, which I think was a bit unfair, instead he turns tail, heads back into town.
The cloth bag weighed heavily at his side as Yanith made his way through the winding streets between the warehouses. The bustle of the docks was behind him, but the sun was still low to the water, leaving the narrow walkways cool and shadowed. He had nearly made it all the way to the Refuge of Four Eyes when a man appeared in the alleyway ahead of him. "Oh, hello," said the stranger. Yanith pulled his head down a little. Good day, sir, said Yanniv, ducking his head and twisting his shoulder to move past the man. The stranger was carrying a large mirror. Certainly wider than the man, but not quite as tall. It looked like it was something of a struggle. Certainly the man was sweating despite the cool morning air. "Oh, you look like a Khazaran. Are you a Khazaran?" "I think you are. You must look like one. Are you a Khazaran?" He didn't give Yanniv time to answer any of his questions. I can tell you now, there's one thing that I'm good at, it's observant. I observe things all the time and can replay many of these things that I've seen. Anyway, where are my manners? I mean, oh, that's interesting. Is that your pouch? That pouch, looks like it's got a jackal on it, but with 3 eyes. Did you make that? Did you carve it yourself? Did somebody get it for you? Was it a gift, or did you buy it from somewhere? Where did you buy that from? "Excuse me," Yanniv said, trying to get past the man, but the stranger was having none of it. "I went to Khazara once, you know. I went to go to the Great Library, but they have all these rules." By this point, Yanniv had backed up slightly and stepped down a side street. He heard the stranger trying to walk after him, but he was struggling too much with the mirror, and it was not too much effort to get away from the man. He soon heard his voice disappearing, and after a short while he was confident the man was lost.
As he stands, the pouch containing the jar of meaty substance quivers slightly at his hip as he walks along. He makes his way through the streets, the air still cool, and especially in the shadowed areas of the alleyways, the sun had not yet quite penetrated through, still remaining low to the water. He was heading to his destination when a strange man approaches from the other side. He is carrying what looks like to be a mirror, almost the height of a man, and certainly wider than a man. The stranger greets Yanniv. "Hello, hello!" And Yanniv bows his head down low, pulling his hood forward, and says, "Good day," and tries to make his way past. But this stranger's very insistent. He talks with a very quick, repetitive manner. "Hello, are you from Macleod? Macleod? Are you sure you're from Macleod? I think Macleod. I've seen that before. Oh, that pouch at your hip. What a lovely pouch. How are you doing? What's that carving on it is exquisite. Was it yourself? Did you do it? Where's it from? Where are you going to? I once met a man from Macleod, you know." His pace of speech didn't let Yanniv get a word in edgeways. Yanniv, keen not to engage any further, slid slightly back, making some distance away from the stranger. He finds himself opposite an alley and makes his way down there. He can clearly hear the stranger approaching or trying to follow, but the weight of that mirror does not allow him to catch up. Yanniv had seen that the gentleman was clearly sweating from the effort of carrying the mirror. Yanniv took time to pause, get his bearings, and looked around, making his way to his destination.
The streets are still dark. Though the sun is slowly rising, the alleyways still have a eerie gloom to them. Keeping to the alleyways, he skirts his way through the city until he stumbles upon a man, a stranger, carrying a, I suppose, man-sized mirror with him. It catches his eye, and he approaches Yanniv. He is very quick, constantly talking, constantly asking inquiries, questions. Yanniv, not wanting any part of this, tries to give him the slip. He pokes up his hood and continues forward to his destination. Yet this man seems undeterred by this. He seems determined to talk to Yanniv. So he approaches and starts talking very, very quickly. "Oh, you like this? You want this? Yes, you are good. Oh, you are good. You look good. This looks good. You would like this. Oh, yes, you got. That's a very nice pouch there. What's in the pouch? What do you want this? What do you want this?" Basically, Warren constantly barraging Yanniv with these questions and just a constant barrage. Yanniv, getting more irritated by this, not wanting the attention, decides to lose him in the crowd. Still, bringing up his hood, he starts to move faster and faster, weaving in and out of crowds, weaving in and out of alleyways. The stranger tries to keep up, but unfortunately, carrying a mirror does somewhat impede someone's speed. And not before long, Yaneth loses him.
Still in the dim light before the full dawn, he heads through the streets to his destination. It is here that he meets a man with a large mirror. The mirror is almost as tall as this individual. Yaneth pulls his hood forward as to avoid the individual, but he spots him anyway and heads over, moving the mirror. You want this mirror? You want it? You want to buy this mirror? Yaneth tries to move on, but the man is insistent. You want it? I've got many things for you. What was in that pouch? Certain that he's not going to lose the man easily, he decides that he will head on into a crowd that is gathering in the market area as the light rises. It is here that the man carrying the large mirror cannot follow him because of the added weight. Yaneth, hood still pulled forward, moves through the crowd on towards his destination.
Now, on the way to his destination, he comes across a man with a large mirror. And the mirror is almost as tall as the man himself. And the man says, "Do you want to buy a mirror? Do you want to buy the mirror? It's a very good mirror." But Yaneth waves him off and says, No, I haven't got time. Anyway, the man's very insistent, and he keeps following Yaneth until Yaneth reaches the marketplace. And because the marketplace is quite busy, even at this early time of the morning, and there's people bustling around, running here, running there, Yaneth ducks and dives, and he manages to lose the man with the mirror, because obviously the mirror is very heavy and it's weighing the man down and slowing him down.
He starts to walk into town and he sees this guy who's got a mirror. He's holding this mirror and it's huge, it's bigger than the guy, and he's holding it. And he says to Yaneth, "Do you want to buy a mirror?" And Yaneth says, No, I don't. But this guy's really insistent and starts following him. And Yaneth says, No, I don't want to buy a mirror. But he just keeps chasing him. So Yaneth has to run, and he's running through this busy marketplace that's it's really busy, this market. So he finally loses this guy who's carrying the mirror because it's really heavy and he can't move. But Yaneth is ducking and diving, and he gets to his destination. He's lost the guy with the mirror. Great.
And as he's walking through the town and the markets, there's this man holding like a giant mirror. It's probably bigger than he is, so I don't know how he's holding it. Maybe there's another guy, I don't know. But he's holding this giant mirror, and this guy's persistent. He's trying to sell it to Yaneth, and Yaneth's like, "Look, mate, I don't want to buy your mirror. I just got no place for it in my house. Stop trying to make me buy your mirror." And the guy's like, "No, please buy my mirror." He's just being so persistent. So Yaneth's like, "Right, I gotta get out of here." So he goes away, and the guys still follow him with this huge mirror. I don't know how. And Yaneth's going through the streets, ducking and diving, trying to get away. And luckily, he does get away because you can't really drag a giant mirror around the marketplace and catch up. So I don't know what I'm saying.
He walks back up through the markets, where he comes across a tradesman. And the tradesman was holding a giant mirror. This mirror was bigger than the man himself. Yes, he was still standing there, holding this mirror. Maybe he had some help. maybe he didn't. I can't quite remember. Anyway, he was trying to sell this mirror to most of the passers-by, trying to sell how good people would look when they look in the mirror to see themselves full length as they put on their clothes. He's your Yanif, who dresses quite elegantly and quite smartly in the trade that he's in, being an alchemist. And he calls his attention. "Ah, young sir, would you like to buy this mirror from me?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I would not like to buy the mirror from you. I do not have time. And where would I put it in my house? It is far too big for my house." The salesman would not let Yanif go. He tried to stop him, tried to block him in many ways as Yanif tried to walk away. Yanif managed to break away from the man. He started walking through the marketplace. But luckily for Yanif, carrying a giant mirror is quite a difficult task when you're by yourself. The salesman, he did try to follow, taking the mirror with him. Yanif turned this way, he turned that way, he went down the back alleys, and that's where he lost the tradesman. He walked around the town for a bit longer, heading towards a particular secret place.
A short time later, Yanif had managed to make his way back on track, and the door to the refuge came into sight. He paused at the door for a moment, checked his cloth shoulder bag for the jar. The meaty substance twitched violently when he opened the flap. He closed it hurriedly and knocked on the door. "What's the weather like in Aquil?" came a voice from behind the door. Pausing for a moment to think, Yanif said, "The clouds over Aquil are always still, and there's no way of knowing if it will soon be snowing."
He found himself at the refuge, Gustav's hideout. He looks around carefully checks the pouch at his belt, and all is safe, and knocks on the door. A voice issues from the other side. "What is the weather like in Aquil?" Yanif slowly passed the door. "The weather in Aquil is always full of still clouds, and there is always a threat of snow."
After more walking, Yanith finally reaches his destination. He knocks on the door 4 times. A slot opens up. Eyes peer through the slot. Darkness within. A gruff voice comes out. "What is the weather like in Aquil this time of year?" Yanith replies, "It is always cloudy, with always a chance of snow."
When he finds it, he knocks 4 times. There is a pause, and then through the small gap in the door, 2 beady eyes peer out and ask, "What is the weather in Aquil?" Yanith replies, "Cloudy with a chance of snow."
So eventually Yanith reaches his destination, and it's a house. And he knocks on the door, and a little hatch opens in the door, and a man's face appears and he says, What is the weather like in Ickwill? And it's obviously a code word, because Yaneth replies, It's cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
He arrives at this door and he knocks on the door, and a small hatch opens, and this person pops their head out and says, What's the weather like in Ickwill? And Yaneth knows it's a special code, and so he replies with the proper answer. It's raining meatballs. It's bollocks. It's raining. It's rain. There's a chance of rain. It's cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
Right, what's next? Okay, so he gets away and he gets to, I can't remember where it was, but he gets to a place, maybe an underground bar? What was it? Club? Some sort of like dodgy establishment. And he knocks on the door and the man's like, What's the weather like in Mistas? Which is clearly a code, so he's like, It's cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
He's heading to an underground bar or club. He found the door, the entrance place, knocked on the door. Door opened a bit. The man behind the door speaks. What kind of weather is it in Mistas? Obviously a code, a password type situation. Oh, well, it is cloudy with a slight chance of meatballs.
A heavy bolt was drawn back from behind the door and Yaneth went inside. Once inside, Yaneth was led to Gustav's room. It was as he remembered it, a small room with 2 comfortable seats. There was a small table between the seats and a door at the other side of the room. The door had a small hatch in it, which opened, closed, and then the door opened itself. Gustav came in. Gustav nearly tripped over the small dog that rushed in ahead of him. Gustav was shorter than Yaneth by half a foot and wider by the same. He lowered himself down to one of the comfortable seats, and Yaneth did so as well, extricating his feet from the yipping furball that was sniffing and nibbling at his shoes. Florin! Calm down, said Gustav in an attempt to calm his dog. The small beast ran back to Gustav and jumped upon his lap. Gustav scratched Florin behind the ears and the dog twisted his head to the side and murmured in satisfaction. So, Yaneth, how's your beautiful mother? Dead, as you know, said Yaneth flatly. Gustav's smile remained. How'd things go with Royston? All is as we wished it to be. The hag's price has been met and we should now both be free. Well, that's good news, isn't it? Good news indeed. And Gustav's eyes flicked down to Yaneth's robes. The thing?
The sound of large bolts being drawn is heard, and Yaneth makes his way in to Gustav's hideout. He's escorted to another thick set door with a hatch set in. There's a small knock and the hatch opens, and there he sees the face of Gustav. Another bolt is drawn and the door opened. Gustav comes out to greet Yaneth and nearly falls over as a small, furry dog, his pet Florian, nearly catches him under the feet. Come in, Yaneth. Yaneth sits down opposite, and Florian, the small dog, jumps up on Gustav's lap, rolling over to let him tickle his belly. So, my friend, tell me, how did your trade with Royston go last night? It is as we wanted, Yaneth replied. The deed is done, the price is paid. The hag bounty has been found. Good, good. And did all go as planned? It is all as planned.
The gruff voice pauses, closes, and the door opens. He moves forward a bit more down this hallway until he reaches another door. He knocks the door, slit open, and before him lies Gustav, the man he was here to see. Opening the door, Gustav brings him in. Come in, quickly, quickly. He enters. Inside the room is a table, and two chairs, and a small dock. Gustav sits behind the desk, where the small dog runs up to Yanni and starts pawing at his leg. Yanni, scared and wasn't expecting this, jumps slightly and slightly irritated by this dog, kind of nudges him away. Then he sits down at the desk. Gustav claps his hands, and the poor dog, I can't remember the name, I think it's Philo. I can't remember Philo, I think it is, it's Philo. It's calling Philo. Philo to come back. Which the dog does. Gustav then leans back and stares at Did it go as according to plan? Yannick smiled. It did. Everything according.
The man shuts the peery hole, and after a few moments the door opens and Yannick is allowed to enter. Inside he is guided through to a room where there is a table and two chairs. Sound familiar? And Gustav, the man who he has come to meet. Ah, Yannick! I can't talk like Yannick. Yannick greets Gustav and is suddenly taken back as a small yappy type dog runs up and starts, jumping up onto Yannick. And Gustav calls the dog Philo, and the dog retreats back to him. They sit down at the table, and Gustav asks, "How did the job go?" Yannick says, "Well."
Anyway, the password must have been correct, because the door then swings open and Yannick greets his friend Gustav. Gustav lets him into the house. He leads him in to the dining room, and they sit down at either side of the table. And Yannick brings out the jar of meat that he retrieved from the ship on his previous escapade. Now, there's a little yappy dog, which Gustav says, whose name Gustav says is Philo, although I think Yannick misheard and thought it was Fido. And this dog is jumping around, yapping as little dogs do, and Yannick keeps kind of brushing him away. Anyway, Gustav says, "Time to get down to business. How did the job go?" And Yannick said, "It went well. It went well."
And that's the correct answer. So he goes in. So he goes into the house and he meets a guy called Gustav, and he says to Gustav, They go into a dining room. They sit down at the table. Janif has got his pouch. And Gustav says, How was the mission? And Gustav says, yeah, it was alright, it was good. And this dog appears. And Gustav says, oh, don't worry about Philo. But Janif mishears him and thinks the dog is called Fido.
And then the guy's like, you may enter. So he opens the door, Janif goes in, and he goes into like a seating area, and there's this man called Gustav? Is his name Gustav? Anyway, he goes and he sits down with this guy called Gustav, and Gustav has got a dog called Finley. Fiddly? No, it's not Fiddly. Anyway, it sounds like Fido, and Janif thinks it's called Fido, but it's not called Fido. Long story short, it's a dog, and
You may enter. Door opens. Janif enters. He's there to meet one of his acquaintances, Gustav. He walks in, he looks around. The place is fairly empty. He sees Gustav sitting in the corner with his dog. Findlay, Fido, Fido. The name wasn't quite clear, and it didn't matter much. But his dog was there with him. So Janif walks over, he sits down. Ah, Gustav, it is good to meet you. Gustav nods.
There was a touch of saliva at the corner of Gustav's mouth. Florin yipped slightly and rolled over on Gustav's legs, exposing his belly. Janif reached inside his bag and pulled out the jar with the quivering meat inside it, laying it gently on the table between the two of them. Florin rolled over again to look at the jar, sniffing the air aggressively. In a moment, the small dog leapt forward towards the jar, yipping in midair. Janif reached out to try and grab the jar himself, but in vain, as the small dog careened into the jar, knocking it from the table. Janif's eyes locked with Gustav's. Gustav's went wide, and in a flash, faster than a man of his size should have been able to move, Gustav was at the door. Janif looked down to the table. He could see clearly the jar had broken, and Florin had slid across the table, straight into the meaty mass. He heard the door slam and looked over to Gustav's door. The hatch was open, and he could just see Gustav looking inside through the hatch. Janif looked down again to where Florin had fallen. The yipping had stopped. One of his small paws reached up on the side of the table. He thought everything was fine. He thought that Florin was going to climb up across the table and start yipping again, but it was not to be. The leg of the dog lurched forward. It had clearly been severed by the joint connecting it to the body of the beast. Now, a string of the meaty substance joined the dog's leg to the mass of putrid meat. That meat then clambered up on top of its table. You could see Florin's head with the jaw split wide open. The whole creature now a mass of meat and separate dog parts that were slowly dissolving into it, climb up on top of the table and start skittering towards Janif. The dog's mouth opened and yipped once more. Janif didn't take his eyes away from him.
And the substance, did you get the jar we sought? I did indeed. At this, Janith reaches down into his pouch and pulls out the jar. A strange, meaty substance quivering, letting the jar shake slightly, and puts it on to the desk. Florian turns over onto its legs, puts the forelegs up onto the desk, and sniffs at the jar. Both Janith and Gustav stare at the meaty substance inside. You can see the look of intrepidation on their faces. Florian is obviously amused by this and suddenly lurches forward to nudge the jar. Yanith looks back in surprise. Gustav's eyes are wide with fear. And as Florian touches the jar, it grows on its side and rolls off the end of the desk. Gustav is not a small man, shorter than Yanith by maybe half a foot. He's certainly broader and wider. But you would not have believed the speed at which he got up and ran to the door. Florian, the inquisitive dog, intrigued by what's happened, already on the desk, and leaps down. There's a sudden bang as the door slams. Yanith looks around and can see Gustav looking through the small hatch within the doorway. Yanith looks back at the desk and sees a paw rise up and rest on the edge of the desk. Oh, he thinks. With that, the paw extends, a stringy, meaty mass joins the leg where it once joined the body of the dog. Yanith's eyes widen yet more. The jar clearly had broken. Backing off towards the doorway, which is shut, Yanith now sees the quivering mass that attaches the paw leg rise up, and rolling up over the edge of the desk is a large, meaty mass, quivering and decorated with various parts of dog, separated from the body, but clearly being absorbed into the massy mound, almost dissolved with an acidic hiss. The dog jaws open wide and give a final yelp.
Do you have the jar? Yanith nods, opens up the pouch, and presents the jar that he retrieved the night before. This meaty, oozing substance inside just slowly twisting. Gustav smiles. Excellent, excellent. At that moment, Philo, the small dog, jumps up onto the desk, intrigued by this meaty substance, and bats it with his paw. The jar knocks over and starts rolling, and off the desk, there's a pause. Gustav and Yanith hold their breath. The dog jumps down, following it. Gustav gets up, oh no, and starts running towards the door and opens the slit. Yanith, not sure what to do, pauses for a moment and waits. And waits. Until a single paw rises above the desk. And then continues to rise as this oozy mass seems to have stretched the muscles of this paw. Yanith gets up and pushes back, where he can see the dog being consumed, digested by this meaty, oozy mass. But parts of the dog, fur, limbs, kind of stretched out and slowly dissolving in this. And the jaw, the remaining jaw of the dog, stretches as ooze drips from it. Yanith runs to the door, but it's closed.
And then Gustav asks for the all-important jar of meat that Yanith has retrieved. He places it on the table, and before either man can interact, the small yappy dog, Philo, jumps up, batting the jar. It falls and rolls towards the edge of the table. Both men watch, not sure who's going to grab for it. And then the jar hits the floor. From where they're sat, they can't quite see what's going on until one large paw from the dog hits the table edge. The paw is extended and around it is oozing this kind of meat. Looking over the edge of the table, they see that the dog's form has been consumed and digested by this meat. It has risen up around him and his jaw is stretched wide with ooze all dripping out of it. Yanif sees this and looks to escape, heading back towards the door. But the door is shut, and the shutter is shut.
At this point, as he's trying to brush the dog away, he accidentally knocks the jar onto its side, and it rolls slowly towards the edge of the table. Neither man knows what to do. They're both in shock, watching this thing slowly roll towards the edge of the table, each thinking that the other man is going to grab him and stop him falling onto the floor. Of course, that doesn't happen, and the jar rolls off the edge of the table and falls onto the floor. Neither men see the jar land, but both men hear the smash of the glass. The dog stops yapping, and then all each man can see is a big paw reach onto the side of the table, and then another paw, much larger than what the paw should have been on such a small dog. Yanith is scared, he's in shock, he's scared shitless, and he looks around and realises that Gustav is no longer there. He rushes over to the door, and the door's locked. He rushes over to the shutters, and the shutter's locked. He looks around, trying to figure out what to do. How can he get out of here? He doesn't want to stay in the room with this huge creature that seems to be emerging from what should have been a small dog.
Anyway, he opens up his pouch and pulls out this jar of meat, and he places it on the table. And this dog, Philo, is attacking his legs, and he says, "Oh, get off, get off." And the dog is properly attacking his feet, so he keeps hitting, trying to get this dog away. And as he's moving around, he knocks the jar of meat, and it starts to roll across the table. And both Gustav and Yanif are staring at this jar as it rolls off, and they're both thinking, oh, the other one's going to grab it, but neither of them get it, and the jar rolls straight off the table. Neither of them see it land, but they both hear the crash of the glass as it shatters. And suddenly the dog is quiet. It's no longer attacking Yanif's legs. It's absolutely silent, and that's when they hear a really strange noise, and suddenly one giant mutated paw comes on top of the table, and Yanif starts getting a bit scared, and then a second giant paw comes on top of the table, and then Yanif sort of gets up from his chair, and he realises that Gustav is gone, and he's all alone in this room with the mutant dog. And he goes to the shutters, and they're locked, and he goes to the door, and it's locked, and that's when he realises he's trapped in the room with the mutant dog.
So Yanif puts this jar of meat on the table, that meaty substance, he puts that down on the table, and they get to talking, and I don't know if they talk about anything. Ooh. Anyway, so they're talking, and then this dog starts attacking Yanis' legs. They're just like grabbing his feet, biting his feet, and Yanis like, get off. And the owner's not doing anything about it. He's obviously got some issues, and this dog's just attacking his feet, and he keeps attacking them. And then this jar of meat that was on the table, because he's thrashing around so much trying to get the dog off, falls on its side and rolls down the table. And imagine it in slow motion, it's rolling down the table, and Yanis thinking, oh, it's getting further away from me, and the other guy, Gustav, is thinking, oh, Yanis will get it, and it just keeps rolling, and no one gets it, and it falls onto the ground, and they don't see it fall, but they hear the smash of the glass as it hits the floor, and they're both in shock. And the dog, which was mauling his feet, has stopped and is silence for a couple of seconds, and then you just see a big old dog paw up on the table, and then you see another big old dog paw get up on the table, and then Yanis looks over to Gustav, and he's gone. He's left the room, he's closed all the doors, and so Yanis is trapped in this room with a mutant dog, a mutated dog. Gustav is left, and he's like, what do I do? So he tries all the doors, they're all locked, and he can't get out, and so he's just trapped in a room with a mutant dog.
Yanis sits there, takes out the jar of meat which he had recently acquired from his trip out to the boat, places it down on the table in front of Gustav, and they talk about various different things. Obviously there's possibly some trade there wanting around the jar. The details weren't great. After a few moments, the dog, Fido, Findlay, who knows, starts getting a bit antsy. So it starts nuzzling at Yanis' legs. And then it starts playfully biting Yanis' legs. Yanis is there trying to shake the dog off because Gustav wasn't making any attempt to stop the dog whatsoever. So as Yanis is trying to beat the dog off, the dog gets a bit more rowdy and starts bouncing up and down and starts knocking the table. As Yanis tries to fight the dog off a bit more, the dog gets really feisty, and at one point he bumps the table so hard the jar falls and starts rolling towards the table edge. Gustav looks at Yanis, Yanis looks back at Gustav. Neither of them make a move to stop the jar rolling. Yanis thinks, oh, Gustav will get it. Gustav thinks, Yanis will get it. Neither of them went for it, so instead, the jar continues to roll. They continue to stare at each other. Neither of them see the jar fall. Instead, they hear the smash of glass on the floor. The dog, who was mauling Yanis' legs, stops. A giant paw comes up on the table edge. The other paw comes up on the other side. Yanis glares over. The dog has changed. He looks around. Yanis has gone. All the doors, all the windows are all shut. Yanis gets up, he tries the doors to get out. They're all locked. So Yanis is stuck in the room with a mutant dog.
Through the hatch in the door, Gustav looked on. He decided there was nothing he could do, so he closed the hatch and he left.
Yanis looks towards the door and sees the hatch shut, as Gustav has decided he can no longer help. Over to you, Thomas.
And the slit is shut, assuming that Gustav can no longer be of any help. Good luck, Harriet. I'm sorry.
And Gustav is nowhere to be seen. And good luck.
And that's it, I think. So, good luck. Bye.
Okay, that's all I can remember. Good luck, Charlotte. Bye.
And I wonder what he will do. There you go. That's the story. The end.
What happens next? Who knows? Maybe Yannick has survived to tell the tale, but that's another story. Another time. Hope I got some details in there, right?